Sabalenka breaks WTA protocol? Golubic points out major violation. The tennis world was stunned. A single act on court had everyone talking. Sabalenka, known for her fiery dominance, appeared to cross a line no player dares to touch. And Viktorija Golubic, calm, precise, and respected for her integrity, didn't stay silent. The confrontation was quiet, almost invisible, yet it sent shockwaves across social media and the WTA tour. Was this a careless mistake or something far more deliberate? Every fan, every analyst, every player had a theory. And as the drama unfolded, the stakes went far beyond the scoreboard. Aryna Sabalenka had always been a force of nature. She didn't just step onto the court, she commanded it. Every swing of her racket, every stomp of her foot radiated intensity. To her fans, she was electric, fearless, unstoppable. But to her opponents, she was unpredictable, at times even untamed. Her brilliance came with a shadow, moments where her fire seemed to brush against the edges of acceptable conduct. Across the net was Viktorija Golubic, her foil in every sense. Calm, methodical, precise. Golubic moved through her matches with a quiet elegance, her focus unshakable. Where Sabalenka burned bright and fast, Golubic glowed steady and controlled. The contrast between them wasn't just striking, it was a prelude to drama. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Every eye was on Sabalenka as she dominated the opening games with her explosive power. Yet, amid her brilliance, subtle irregularities began to surface. A handshake delayed. A pause that felt longer than usual. Gestures just outside the rhythm of protocol. Golubic noticed. Her eyes sharpened, her jaw clenched. This wasn't just a technicality, it was principle. She approached the umpire, her tone calm but unmistakably firm, signaling that something was wrong. The arena held its breath. The moment was quiet, almost invisible, yet it carried immense weight. Off the court, the tension rippled outward. Fans debated, commentators speculated, and social media exploded. Was Sabalenka's behavior a breach of rules, or simply the intensity of a champion in flow? The line between passion and misconduct had been drawn, and everyone was watching to see who would step over it. Even as Sabalenka powered through her match, the seed of controversy had been planted. This wasn't merely about points or sets, it was about respect, integrity, and the invisible boundaries that define the sport. Fire and ice, chaos and control, Sabalenka and Golubic weren't just opponents in a match, they were symbols of two philosophies colliding, and the collision had just begun. Questions lingered in the air. Had Sabalenka gone too far, or was Golubic overreacting? Either way, the stage was set, and the drama was only starting. The moment came quietly, yet it carried a weight that would shake the entire arena. Sabalenka had just won a grueling rally, her forehand slicing across the court like lightning. Sweat streamed down her face, her chest heaving with exertion. Victory should have been simple. A point secured, a celebration brief and standard. But Sabalenka did something unusual. Instead of moving immediately to the center for the next serve, she paused. Longer than anyone expected. Her racket lingered in her hand, her gaze sweeping the crowd, and for a fraction of a second, the rhythm of the match faltered. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet to Viktorija Golubic, it was glaring. The Swiss player, known for her unwavering respect for the rules, froze. She knew instinctively that this was not just a tactical pause. Something about the way Sabalenka bent the protocol struck her as deliberate. Golubic approached the umpire with measured steps, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable firmness. "That's not allowed," she said, pointing toward the momentary pause and the delay in the handshake. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People leaned forward in their seats, sensing a silent battle that went far beyond the scoreline. Cameras caught the exchange, and social media lit up almost instantly. Clips of the pause spread within minutes, each replay dissected by commentators, fans, and former players alike. Sabalenka noticed Golubic's intervention, her expression hardening. There was a flicker of irritation in her eyes, the kind that could turn a minor dispute into full-blown conflict. "It's not intentional," she said under her breath, though her tone lacked the warmth of reassurance. To some, it sounded like a defense. To others, a challenge. The tension was palpable. Every serve, every glance, every breath carried a new weight. For the first time in the match, the arena felt electric, not with applause, but with anticipation. Spectators felt the drama simmering, the collision of two personalities that could not coexist quietly. Sabalenka's fire met Golubic's ice, and sparks were inevitable. This was no longer about points or rankings. It was about principles, control, and respect. The pause, the delay, the violation, it had become a trigger, and the story had shifted. Even the players themselves felt the shift. Golubic's focus sharpened, her eyes never leaving Sabalenka for a moment. Every shot she returned carried a silent message: precision, patience, and principle. Sabalenka, meanwhile, tightened her grip on her racket, her energy more intense than ever. The minor procedural violation had unlocked a psychological battlefield. Off the court, debates erupted. Fans argued fiercely online, some defending Sabalenka's intensity, others praising Golubic's courage to call out a perceived wrongdoing. Analysts speculated that the pause might have been deliberate, a test of nerves. The WTA rules, usually clear and unquestioned, were suddenly under the microscope. And in the middle of it all, two players carried the storm of scrutiny silently across the net. By the end of that set, the match had transformed. What began as a clash of skill had evolved into a confrontation of philosophy, fire versus ice, instinct versus discipline. And for Sabalenka and Golubic, the first conflict had only just begun. By the time Sabalenka walked off the court, the whispers had already become a roar. The incident, the subtle violation, the delayed handshake, the pause that seemed to defy protocol, was no longer just a matter of the match. It had become a story that consumed social media, sports forums, and live commentary alike. Every fan had a theory. Every pundit had a hot take. The tennis world was watching, and the narrative was spinning out of control. Clips of the exchange between Golubic and the umpire circulated online instantly. One frame showed Golubic, calm but firm, pointing towards Sabalenka while keeping her composure perfectly intact. Another froze Sabalenka mid-pause, her eyes scanning the crowd with a flicker of defiance. Fans debated endlessly. Was this a calculated move by Sabalenka, or a mere lapse in judgment? Some praised her genius for using the smallest moment to unsettle her opponent. Others criticized her, calling the act disrespectful and unsportsmanlike. The conversation quickly crossed borders. Former players tweeted their opinions. Analysts dissected the moment with slow-motion replays, highlighting every subtle gesture, every second that Sabalenka had lingered. The hashtag Sabalenka protocol violation trended within hours, while fans of Golubic countered with hashtag respect the rules. The atmosphere online was electric, charged with tension, and almost no one remained neutral. Golubic, meanwhile, remained composed in interviews. "I'm just trying to play fair," she said, her voice measured but firm. "Tennis has rules for a reason, and we all have to respect them. That's all I'm asking." Those words, simple on their surface, ignited a storm. Many praised her courage, calling it a reminder that even at the highest level, integrity matters. Others saw it as a provocation, suggesting that calling out a superstar mid-match could create unnecessary drama. Sabalenka's camp responded cautiously, offering little more than a brief statement. Aryna plays with intensity and passion. Any disruption is never intentional. She respects the game and her opponents. The statement, neutral on paper, only fueled more debate. Was it damage control? Or a subtle denial masking an intentional tactic? Meanwhile, fans flooded comment sections with heated arguments. Some celebrated Sabalenka's boldness, claiming she played the mental game brilliantly. Others rallied behind Golubic, praising her courage to call out what many considered a breach of professional conduct. Memes, reaction videos, and opinion polls multiplied exponentially. The incident had jumped from a single match to a global conversation about fairness, psychology, and the thin line between brilliance and rule-breaking. In the days that followed, sports journalists framed the incident as more than just a technicality. It became a story about character under pressure, about the clash of two philosophies, Sabalenka's raw, unpredictable power versus Golubic's disciplined, principled precision. Every interview, every social post, and every fan comment added fuel to the fire. By the end of this chapter, the pause on the court had morphed into a narrative war. The match was remembered, not just for the points won or lost, but for the principles tested, the nerves challenged, and the emotions ignited. Sabalenka's power met Golubic's patience, and the world was caught in the middle, choosing sides, debating, and waiting for the next act in a drama that was far from over. The storm ignited on the court had now exploded across the tennis world. Headlines screamed about Sabalenka's alleged breach of protocol. Social media feeds overflowed with opinions, some praising Golubic for standing up to one of the most formidable players on the tour, others defending Sabalenka, insisting that her intensity should never be penalized. Every angle had been dissected, replayed, and debated. The controversy wasn't fading, it was intensifying. Within hours, former champions and tennis analysts weighed in. "Rules are the backbone of our sport," one commentator tweeted, "and no star should be above them. Golubic did what anyone should. She spoke up." Another countered, "This is overblown. Sabalenka plays with heart, passion, and fire. A slight pause isn't a crime." The conversation became less about the match itself and more about the ethics of competition, about where brilliance ends and overstepping begins. The WTA responded, releasing a statement that tried to tread carefully. They acknowledged that the moment had been under review and reminded players of the importance of following all procedural rules. The language was neutral, measured, but it did little to calm the waters. Fans interpreted it in every way possible, some as a warning for Sabalenka, others as a subtle exoneration. The ambiguity only fueled the drama. Inside the locker rooms, whispers turned into tension. Fellow players watched closely, some quietly criticizing, some defending. Sabalenka's opponents admitted that, while her talent was undeniable, the incident had created a psychological ripple across the tour. "You can't underestimate the mental edge she gains when the rules bend in subtle ways," one player was overheard saying. Meanwhile, Golubic's reputation soared. She was lauded for integrity, for courage, for being the one willing to hold even the most powerful star accountable. Even fans became part of the fallout. Online polls, debates, and heated comment threads erupted into near-chaotic exchanges. Memes spread of Sabalenka with exaggerated pauses and dramatic reactions, while Golubic was depicted as the stoic heroine, upholding the sport's honor. Every interaction, every post, every video clip added layers to the narrative, keeping it alive in public consciousness far beyond the match itself. The controversy even began to seep into tournament coverage. Sports shows debated the psychological impact. How would Sabalenka respond in her next matches? Would the WTA enforce stricter rules to prevent future violations? Could a single incident affect rankings, endorsements, or even the legacy of two elite players? The ripple effect was enormous, and every person connected to women's tennis felt it in some way. Through it all, Sabalenka remained fiercely focused on her game, yet the tension was impossible to ignore. The backlash had become a new opponent: public scrutiny, media pressure, and a growing narrative that painted her not just as a competitor, but as a rule breaker in the eyes of many. For Golubic, the incident solidified her place as a guardian of principle, but also thrust her into the spotlight in ways she hadn't anticipated. By the end of this chapter, the incident had transcended a single match. What began as a brief pause on court had become a defining moment, a lightning rod for discussion about power, integrity, and control in women's tennis. The fallout was undeniable. No player, fan, or official could ignore it. And the question lingered: how would the storm finally settle? After days of swirling debate, interviews, and viral clips, the moment of reckoning arrived. Aryna Sabalenka, known for her intensity and rarely seen in a defensive posture, finally addressed the controversy. Sitting before the cameras, flanked by her team, she took a deep breath. The stadium lights and social media glare felt distant compared to the weight of what she was about to say. "I never intended to break any rules," she began, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. "Tennis is about focus, about giving your best, and sometimes in the heat of the moment, things happen that are misunderstood. I respect Viktorija and the WTA rules. I play hard, I play fast, and I always want to win fairly." Her words were deliberate, measured. It was the first public acknowledgement that the pause on court had been noticed, dissected, and questioned. To her fans, it was a reassurance. Sabalenka remained committed to the sport's integrity. To her critics, it was a concession, a subtle admission that the line between passion and protocol had blurred. The WTA then released an official clarification. The ruling was nuanced. While Sabalenka's actions had technically strayed from protocol, there was no evidence of intentional misconduct. A gentle reminder was issued to all players about the importance of following the guidelines strictly. The language was firm, yet careful not to penalize one of the tour's biggest stars. In the world of professional tennis, it was a compromise: acknowledgement without severe punishment. Meanwhile, Golubic offered her perspective, demonstrating grace amid controversy. She said, "Rules exist for fairness. I spoke up because I believe in that fairness. Aryna didn't intend harm, but it's important for all of us to uphold the standards. That's how the game thrives." Her response resonated widely, earning respect from both fans and fellow players. The confrontation had tested principles, but also highlighted the humanity behind competition. The fallout gradually shifted from accusation to reflection. Analysts debated not just what happened, but why moments like these occur in high-pressure sports. Was Sabalenka's pause a psychological tactic, a misstep, or a symptom of the emotional intensity that drives her brilliance? And Golubic's role, calling out the violation calmly, became a case study in integrity, composure, and courage. For fans, the narrative evolved. What had started as outrage turned into fascination with the mental and emotional dynamics of elite tennis. Comment threads no longer focused solely on the violation itself, but on the personalities, philosophies, and strategies at play. Sabalenka and Golubic were no longer just competitors, they were symbols. One of fire, raw talent, and risk, the other of ice, precision, and principle. By the end of this chapter, the storm had settled into a cautious truce. The public spectacle had passed, the WTA had clarified the rules, and both players had spoken their truths. Yet the tension lingered, quietly beneath the surface, a reminder that in elite sports, the battle is never just about the ball. It is about respect, psychology, and the choices players make under pressure. The world watched. The controversy resolved but not forgotten, and the question hung in the air: had this incident strengthened the integrity of the game, or merely highlighted the thin line that separates genius from rule-breaking. As the dust settled from the storm that Sabalenka's pause had ignited, the tennis world began to reflect on what had truly unfolded. What initially seemed like a minor procedural misstep had transformed into a narrative about personalities, principles, and the psychology of elite competition. The drama between Sabalenka and Golubic had captured attention, not only because of skill on the court, but because it revealed the fragile balance between ambition and ethics, power and restraint. Sabalenka, the firebrand of the tour, had demonstrated once again why she was both feared and admired. Her intensity, raw and uncompromising, could shift the momentum of a match with a single glance or swing of the racket. Yet the incident had shown that even the most powerful stars are watched closely, measured against invisible standards, and held accountable not just for performance, but for adherence to the rules that govern the game. Golubic, in contrast, emerged as a quiet hero of principle. Her decision to speak up, calmly, respectfully, without drama, had underscored her integrity and her respect for the sport. While she didn't dominate headlines with power or style, her stance resonated with players and fans alike, highlighting that true strength can also lie in composure, moral clarity, and courage. The contrast between the two women had become more than a rivalry. It had become a study in character under pressure. Off the court, the story left lasting ripples. Commentators revisited the incident weeks later, framing it as a teaching moment about respect and responsibility in sports. Fans continued to debate, dissecting the balance between mental gamesmanship and protocol. And across the WTA, young players and aspiring champions observed the episode, learning that in elite tennis, every action, every pause, every gesture carries weight. For Sabalenka, the lesson was clear. Brilliance is most celebrated when tempered by awareness and respect. For Golubic, it was a testament to the power of quiet courage, to standing firm in moments where others might hesitate. Together, they had created a story that would linger in the collective memory of the sport. One small on-court action had evolved into a discussion about legacy, behavior, and the principles that define champions. And so, as the season continued, the match and its controversy became part of the lore of women's tennis. Fans remembered not just the score, but the tension, the confrontation, the ethical questions it had raised. Analysts cited it as a reference point for debates about sportsmanship. Young players carried it as a lesson that skill alone isn't enough. Integrity and composure matter just as much. Ultimately, the story of Sabalenka and Golubic reminds us that greatness isn't measured only in titles or points. It is measured in moments that challenge values, in decisions made under pressure, and in the courage to stand for what is right. The match, the pause, the confrontation, they were more than a spectacle. They were a mirror reflecting the heart of competition itself. Was this just a rivalry over a fleeting rule, or a defining moment that would shape the culture of women's tennis for years to come? That is a question every fan, every player, and every commentator must answer for themselves. The drama between Sabalenka and Golubic showed us that tennis is as much about character as it is about power. Intensity meets integrity. Fire meets ice. And every decision matters. What do you think? Did Sabalenka cross the line, or was Golubic overreacting? Comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the world of women's tennis rivalries and drama.